Hello and welcome to Shooting the Shit with Vicki, and my guest today is my friend Thaao Penghlis. Thaao!
Oh my God. I love how do you start a show saying shooting the shit, shooting the shit? I mean, it's like,
I said this is Shooting the Shit and it isn't. This is game change. I'm telling you, I have been in the house too long. This is Game Changers with
yeah,
Vicki Abelson and Thaao Penghlis. I have Shooting the Shit the other day. I've lost my mind.
it's okay. It's okay. It's the old school stuff, when you hear things when it's
All right, this is going to make a sound for a second. I'm going to do something. I'm going to bring up a file there so that we can see who's.
okay.
That's so we can see who's
the
watching.
old school stuff, when you hear things when it's
No, all right, this is going to make a sound for a second. I'm going to do something for more than a second. Okay. I'm trying to make it so that we'll be able to see when people join us. Hi, Jan. And we'll be able to talk to people and take their questions.
there. Is Jan there?
Jan is here.
Oh, hello, Jan.
And Mickey's here. We're going to have lots of your friends here as well as mine. The COVID crazies are going to be here. And we're going to talk about, Thaao, I don't know how you can possibly look so good after a year of pandemic. So I told you before the show, hi, Tova, that we have the COVID crazies who watch this show, which is why I was thinking Shooting the Shit, because that's what we do the other days. Tell me something about what were you doing when the lights went out? What were you doing when we hit the stay at home?
Part of the way you fill yourself up is depending on the experience you've had in the foundation you build.
Right.
For me, it's been a history of building, especially in the journeys that I've taken and the artwork that I've collected along the way.
Right.
There's something about when you surround yourself with art, as the Chinese used to say, the spirit of the artist always is with the piece. Each piece that I have has a story. And how I discovered them. So I remember one day when I was getting to be a little bit bored, I even found myself not being able to concentrate on reading. I would sit on my couch and then I would look up and I looked at every piece and remembered the history of every piece. And that filled me up because each piece had a history to it, a journey to it. And so that would happen every day for a long time because I have so many pieces. I would walk over to them. I would sit on the couch and look at it. I would have my Greek coffee. And before you knew it, I'd watch the news in the morning and downstairs all afternoon. If I wasn't doing that, I would be writing. And so the time never got ahead of me. I was in charge of my time and I never got bored, because I always think when people say they're bored, I always say, no, you're boring. And
my mother has said my whole life, only boring people get bored.
Right. There's so much, that don't you want to complete what you're meant to do in this lifetime? Why want to come back and make it harder for yourself? So I always say, face the completions, that's very important.
Do you think you've bumped into any souls in this life that you have unfinished business with?
Too many.
Me too. Don't you want to finish the work so you can leave them in this life?
Oh my God, and then I said, what did I do that you had to cross my path? But that's all part of the humor as well. It's I think when you can be self-deprecating, I think as an actor it also helps your humor because you don't take every line seriously. A lot of actors, the young actors, haven't been trained to throw lines away.
We were just talking about that before we went on the air. You were saying that you feel like there's less humor with on sets these days. Why do you think that is, Thaao?
Firstly, they don't have the time to develop. They're basically on the line. They're still at the edge. We don't have the time like we used to, where we were able to study our lines, go in, rehearse 3 or 4 times, be with our partners. But now, you go in, you get the COVID test, and then you've got to go to your dressing room for 2 hours, and you sit there. God forbid you get bored in that square that you're sitting in. And then you have to go when they call you. And then you do your makeup, and then you go to wardrobe if that's necessary, and then they'll call you for each scene that goes on. But I just found that everybody's rather serious. They've taken the drama that's off stage and they bring it on stage, rather than being separate. Because to me, once you get dressed and put those shoes on and you walk into the studio, something about you will have changed. merely because you concentrated on what you're going to wear, how you're going to say certain things, and that carries you in, and this kind of shoes you in. Because to me, when the walk is very important, that strut is very important. So I see people coming in with especially with women, they're wearing soft shoes and all this, and then they've got to put the heels on when they get in, and they don't use that time from going from the gate into the studio to take in the character. And we don't have that much time anymore. So it's very fast. So when you're doing 8 shows a week, and you're doing, maybe 2 shows a day, 3 shows a day, it gets to be, tough. And so you're at the edge. So you don't have time. You look at Peter O'Toole, for instance, the way he used to throw a line. I mean, it just landed because he was self-deprecating, he didn't take himself seriously, but he enjoyed. And that's part of it. Do you have time to enjoy what you're doing, or are you still on the lines? That's
My
why.
favorite year is my favorite movie. It's my favorite comedy.
Yeah.
Thaao, you sound very much, when I was an acting student teacher, it was the inside out, the outside in. And this is very much an outside in approach. Is that your technique? Do you embody the character from putting it on? Is that?
Well, once I've gotten the lines down, then I go, that's part of the foundation. Then I'm free to then explore further things. I like going on set. Now we can't even go on the set until we're called in. I used to like to go on set because I used to take in the mood. I used to like to sit in a chair, take in the mood of the set, take in the mood of the people surrounding the set. And that always gave me a certain privilege and advantage in that I was already prepared and ready for the attack. Do you know what I mean?
Did you ever see Amadeus on Broadway?
Yes.
And he was sitting in the chair when the audience was filing in, and he had all that time to.
All that time. Yes.
Yes, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, because I do that when I did theater. When the curtains were closed, I would come in maybe 20 minutes before it would start. I'd lie on the stage and I'd do my meditation. And then in my mind, I would bring the audience up on the stage with me rather than coming in and then having to bring the audience alive to you and bring them on there, because that's then you've wasted the time. So when you come on the stage, you've already done the homework and you're ready for the performance. You already psychologically know the audience is there with you because I've already put that out.
What kind of meditation do you do, Thaao?
I don't know what you would call it, transcendental meditation,
Have a mantra?
a mantra. I've got a prayer that I've done. I can go under within 15 seconds. I'm in. And depending on the heat that rises from the hands, tells me how deep I've gone. Once I really get locked in and the hands are really hot, I can put them to my face and I can feel the heat. Then I know how deep I've gone. There are times where I can't get as deep as I want, but when I do get it, it's magical. It's like sometimes I say to myself, oh, I don't want to get out. I don't want to come out. I don't want to come out. And then before I realize it, I've been under for over an hour when it felt like 10 minutes.
Help me. How, because I've been trying to meditate for years and I play guided meditations. And if I've gone out for 10 seconds in my life, it's a lot. How did you make that was it a conscious transformation to go?
When I was 26, I remember Diane Ladd. Remember the actress?
Sure.
Yeah. That's how I met Diane, and we worked later together. But I did a course in metaphysics. I also did one with Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, wow.
In her heyday, when she was doing, Out on a Limb. I did a 4-day course with her.
Wow.
And then I've taken different courses. But for me, if you can do 15, 20 minutes in an afternoon, it's like having 3 hours of sleep. Because, we don't sleep deeply. If we do it, we become too tired. So when you go there, it's the place of rest for me. It's where your core is. It's where your center. So in other words, you feel from the top to the bottom of your body that it's all come together in one line. And when that happens, then the heat starts to come. Then the insights start to come. And then I start bringing in the things I want to do, the prayers that I have for friends who are maybe not good, not well. Also the work. I also ask for clarity and right action when it comes to where I need to go next. And those things, and please give me the message that I will recognize. People ask for things, but they never ask for the message that would be clear for them. It may come to you, but you may not hear it, or you may not see it. So the information can be manifested in different things.
Mhm.
It could be you just picking up an orange, and then suddenly, something that you asked for, the answer comes to you. I'm not saying the orange is going to talk back to you, but something about the choosing of something gives you the answer about what you're looking for.
We were just talking about this before we came on the air, about how you were saying when you're in Whole Foods and you're walking through the aisles, food will kind of talk like you intuitively know what your body needs. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when I go through, I look, and then suddenly I'll stop, and I look at what I stop at. That's why I don't like the shopping, that people shop for you. I found that was not very satisfactory. Firstly, they don't choose well. And then because I thought too expensive, with all the fees that they charge you.
Yes,
and then you have to call them up to tell them, I just picked up a papaya, my thumb went through it. You know what I mean? It's almost, so I enjoy. So like if I'm going along the vegetables, I'll look, and then, I stop and I go, oh, that's nice. Yeah. And I'll pick it up. We don't do that when we order online because we're not there in person. So to me, everything's about developing your intuition, sharpening those tools.
Okay, so how much do you believe? This is fascinating to me, Thaao, because I feel very in touch with my intuition. And when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think of, to me, that is the universe speaking to me and giving me a message, because I am completely open. I am a vessel. I have no agenda when I wake up. And I trust my intuition. And my intuition's been questioned as being delusional, think or whatever, and I know that my intuition is on target. Do you believe that? Do you ever feel like your intuition is misleading you?
If I'm out of ethic, when my ethics are out, when I've done something that I should not have done, that's when certain things cross your path.
Interesting.
You think to yourself, now why did I call that in? Because I didn't handle that other thing better. So it's like when people come into my home, not too many, but if I find that I've invited someone or some people that brought in a lot of negatives, because people do bring them, they don't finish their stuff at home, they bring it with them. And they come through your door and, they look around the house and they'll say things like, well, how the hell did you afford to buy all this stuff? And that tells me, instead of saying, oh, that's attractive, or I like that, or what is that, what the inquiry about a piece or something, that tells me that person needs to leave. And they will eventually.
Okay, so how do you do that?
I say things to them that makes them want to leave.
Don't you have something? I mean, Thaao, for those of you who don't know, none of you, most of you don't know. I was blessed to know because I walked through the threshold of Thao's home and into it. Isn't there something outside that is sort of an entry, something energy-wise to coming in? Am I making this up?
Yes, the courtyard. You mean with the big Buddha? And every time I put koi in, they died because either the raccoons get them and eat them, have a feast. So, I have 9 because of Feng Shui. I'll have 9, including a black one. And, I was looking at, they become like your children. You look at them every day and they're so calm and peaceful, swimming around. And then you wake up one morning and all you see are heads floating and the raccoons got in. So then, it's just, so I don't do it anymore. So I have my Buddha, which runs with.
It's the Buddha that I was thinking of,
the Buddha that I do also burn incense and in that courtyard. It's interesting because people will come to the house and say, I love your courtyard. I think what they're loving too, firstly, there's a smell from the plants and the flowers and all that. But I think what it is the energy they've walked into. People don't realize, they think it's pretty, this is nice, this is attractive. No, it's also about the energy that you've able to pull in, because somehow seeing a Buddha or seeing something that looks festive and trusting it's something you can stand in front and say a prayer if that's what your case is, but they will feel something and they'll come in with it. So that's part of the ploy with the courtyard. And
You know,
look at,
Thaao, you just made tears come to my eyes because I was thinking, why did Women Who Write work in my house for 12 years? There's nothing special about this house. There's no furniture. There's really nothing going on here, but there's an energy in here
right.
that as soon as people walk in, you can feel it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you've built a history, a foundation, energy into your place every day or whatever it is. You're not a person that wants to bring in the negative. There are a lot of people who complain, who get into a negative situation because something didn't work out, so they blame something else. So they don't know where to focus. But for me, it's coming into the courtyard. I know for a fact that when people come in, they're going, "Oh, that was so nice," and people relax in my home. And if they don't, and then they leave, I will burn sage.
I can't tell you how much I'm getting out of this already. You've already transformed my life, telling me about the not trusting the intuition if I've done something that's suspect. And I never considered that before. And there's a lot of value to that. This is a transformative conversation already. We can stop now. I've got what I need. No, I'm kidding.
If you're out ethics, you're going to pay a price.
You're very wise.
Well, I have to teach it.
So let's go back to your COVID stuff and how. So what were you doing when we went into lockdown? What did your life look like day to day then? Just prior.
Oh, prior.
Yes, just prior.
Just prior. I just come back from Australia. I went to see my family. I had the most fabulous time.
Didn't it start there? Because wasn't like Tom Hanks in Australia, and that's where he got.
That was last year. That was sort of April, May. We're talking
March.
Oh,
He was.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I came back in January.
Okay.
From Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting to see where a lot of people who eventually married because it was arranged marriage because of the Greeks and how they worked that out. And some relationships worked, but I found that a lot of my relatives were bored with their marriages. It's like the question, this is it? So they look at my freedom, the men especially. The women don't even listen to the men anymore. They've got nothing to say. They've already been through it for years, So it's interesting to see how men eventually, because women become the strong one, they're always the core of the family, with the children, with the food, with the choices that are made in the house. It comes from the woman. And so the men are just sitting there and they're bored and they're used to the women serving them, I always said, why don't you get up your bloody ass and do it yourself? Why are you always waiting for your wife to do it? He goes, what? Well, that's what she does. And I said, no, that's what you do.
Wow.
So change it. And they'll say, oh, thanks for that. But they don't, they become lazy. You see, when we get bored, we become lazy. We become like, we've done enough. That's it. Let's play a round of golf, or let's look at the crossword puzzle, or just sit there and play cards. Nobody's curious. When I went back, they weren't curious. And curiosity to me is part of longevity. What keeps you going? So where does your interest lie? So that's why people say, where are you going next? When most people have retired, I'm still going, I'm still journeying because I haven't done enough. And also because that's your education, self-education. You choose your own education. We went to school because we were told these are the subjects because that's how the school demanded. But then as you get older and you have the freedom, then you choose your own education. And then when you choose that, then you are better equipped and understanding what kind of a soul you brought in, what kind of a spirit you brought in. And until that time, everything's kind of a fog because you have followed what everybody else has told you to do. That's how it was for me. And then when I chose my own education, and then racism goes. When you understand other cultures, when you explore other cultures, because we're seeing racism today being so prominent, being surfaced because of the pain that a lot of people have gone through because they've been pointed at or laughed at or scoffed at or dismissed or, in some way hurt. So when you go to other cultures, if you're not a couch traveler, and you go to other cultures, as I have, you get to understand not just that culture, but it also gives you a better perspective of how other people think and live, which may be different from yours, but they're lessons. how
No,
people.
and it also opens your mind and your heart,
It
doesn't it?
does. Yeah. So when you come back, you know, you're not pointing fingers. You're telling people what great stuff you got to experience. You know. So that's why for me, 2 or 3 journeys a year. Now, a lot of people can't afford to do it,
Right.
but still, you know, you find a way of you know. I said to friends of mine, save something every week, save something every week, and say in December I'm going to take a journey, because you can't. You know, there are people who never left America.
Mhm.
I went to a friend of mine who was 62 years old when I was younger. And I said to them, listen, I'm going to go overseas. Would you like to join me? And they'd never been out. And they said, oh, I can't afford it. And I said, no, I'm going to take you. So I took this teacher of mine who'd
Wow.
never been out of America at 62 because he thought he was old and retiring. And suddenly he couldn't believe what he was exploring. So we went to Egypt, we went to Italy, we went to Greece. At 62, he had a love affair that he had not had in 40 years. You know,
Oh,
things
wow.
like that. So it's amazing what other cultures, other lands have there to explore for you, waiting for you. And you know, it's a wonderful thing to be able to sit down at a table, because people are looking for themselves to grow. You know, like when I go to Egypt, they do, and they eat with their fingers. And people say, "Oh, I can't do that." I said, "Try it. Just try picking up and eating with your fingers, because that's what we used to do before the knife and fork came in." Anyway, so that's another thing about taking journey. It takes away your judgments about other people.
I think that's wonderful. What was the first place you traveled to on your own?
Well, from Australia, I went to Mexico because I got a free trip to America via Mexico with the Ballet Folklorico. So I did that for a few weeks. Then I went to New York. Now, you know, I was a Greek boy, and as one director called Joel Schumacher, remember him, who died this past
Yes.
year,
Yes.
he turned around to the only person I knew in America. Says, "Why would you be dealing with this immigrant?" Is what he said. Why would you? Why? He's just an Greek immigrant. Why would you be dealing with this person? So it's interesting. Years later, because I was dismissed in those days. Years later, I'm on the plane. I'm going to Hawaii and then to Australia, and I was going to go see family. And I was sitting in the first class, and you know, from the kid who had $180 in his pocket, I'm now going first class, and I'm thinking I can go home. And I'm sitting there, and who comes and sits next to me, because it was empty, the seat, was Joel Schumacher. And Joel Schumacher says to me, I have to apologize. I am so sorry about the way I treated you, and the way you have created a career here. From the time I saw you, and I thought you were just this immigrant. So getting that apology.
Without you soliciting for it.
Oh, I didn't even know he was there. And then all those years, you know, later, someone remembered something they did, as I said, pointing fingers and making judgments on somebody without getting to know who they were. Give them a chance. You know.
I wonder if it's something he carried from the moment he said it, knowing it was wrong, or from seeing you succeed and then going, oh, what I said. I wonder. I'm curious.
I don't know with him, because he was a bright man,
Mhm.
very good taste in things. But you know, I remember the conversation when he was 26 at the time I was 20, and Joel Schumacher was talking about how expensive his clothes were. He paid how much for this and how much for that, and that was the conversation. And I thought, my God, these people are so shallow. All they're talking about is their, you know, how much the clothing costs them. But you know, that's what I say. If people make judgments on you, don't let it stop you from moving forward. Be an example.
I think that's insecurity. I think that's they're trying to overcompensate for feeling less than or something. I don't know.
Yes, because Joel Schumacher wasn't exactly pretty, and so you know, who knows why? But the apology was great, you know. And then I saw him at Warner Brothers one day, and he ran across the studio lot and hugged me and said, "How you doing?" and all this. And my manager turned around and said, "You know Joel Schumacher?" I didn't know him. I said, "It's a long story. I'll tell you another day." But that was it. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Hmm.
That's wonderful. Okay, so let's go back to it again. So when COVID started, you had just come back from Australia from seeing. You were very blessed to have just seen them, since
Yes.
you were going to be stopped from doing that in the future. Were you working at the time, or was it a quiet time? Was it?
No, I finished work in November. That's why I took the journey home. Because I'd been to Egypt in April, May,
Mhm.
and I went with my producer Jeff Hayes and his wife, and we had an extraordinary journey, and so I was full. So when the COVID came and
Mhm.
I had to stay home, I have a lovely home. I have
Yes,
a
you
big
do.
backyard. I
Mhm.
I I can be self-sufficient here. I cook well. I eat well.
Yes.
I don't get. I really believe in that ancient saying of nothing in excess and know thyself. Those two principles I always found important, because if you don't know yourself, how do you know what your excesses are? And so it was knowing how to balance myself through these times, but I didn't. It didn't bother me. I could never understand why people needed to get out. Now I understand when they were young, when you're in your 20s, you're a teenager, you want to
Mhm.
go out and you want to have fun, but we were disciplined from the time I arrived in America. So the schooling I had
Mhm.
from the fashion world, the art world, from the acting world, the directing world, um, all that was part of the package, because your 20s are really about what seeds you plant. Your teenage years is where you sort of play around and get into trouble. But in your 20s, you begin to plant the seeds what you want to do. And then when you come into your 30s, those seeds begin to sprout. And you
Mm.
start seeing what you're about to become. And then in your 40s, you've got a foundation you're standing on, because something about what you did in your 20s paid off for what you were doing in your 40s and your 50s and so on. And so I think it's always very important. Know what it is that you want. You have to have clarity about those things, because people don't know what they want. They're afraid to say, I want to become this, or I want to do this. And that's where it stays. It stays as a thought. So when I worked with Milton Ktselas, everything out of the head, once you put it down on paper, it becomes an action.
Mhm.
And so when those things happened, I started to find myself and seeing things happen and develop. And every time I thought I had to change something or move to somewhere else,
Mhm.
a job would come. And that always gave me the indication, no, 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 it's not over. And even with COVID, and when the Emmy came 2 years
Yes,
in a
an
row,
Emmy nomination in the middle of
in the
COVID.
middle of COVID, I thought to myself, oh, what is all this all about? Then suddenly my friend Jan called me up, because I didn't even know. I had missed it on the television, the announcement.
Mhm.
And Jan called me up and said, oh my God, you've been an Emmy nomination. So that was a kind of a reward that lasted for about 6 weeks, and then they forget,
Yeah.
at work, they forget that you've been nominated. And
We don't forget though.
no, I mean, there are accomplishments, that you attain, that you received in your life. You give thanks and you wait for the next
So
one.
what was award season like? Not going to the luncheons, not going to the stuff. Were there Zoom celebrations? What did you
Oh
do?
yes, I had to. It was an interesting time, because I had my makeup artist, when we were going to do a presentation in case we won.
Mhm.
We had to make a speech. So who are we going to thank? Nobody, but my makeup artist Nikki and Lauren Koslow, husband and
Mhm.
wife, they came and they made me up. They were really wonderful about it, and so he did my makeup. We got the lights and everything so we could do it properly. And I did the speech, and they brought the lenses and everything, and that's how we did it. And it was, it was. I always thought, well, it would be nice if you ever won to be able to get in front of your audience. You've earned that right, and tell the people you hate off and give thanks to the people that made a difference. And so I'm left there with the speech. That was it. That was the reward. And then, of course, if you won, then that speech would have surfaced, and you would have said your thanks.
I see.
But the other good thing is, they send us, when you nominated, they send you all these gifts. So then I
Oh,
had,
you still got the swag even though you weren't going to the swag places.
mm, I've
Oh.
got all these gifts and everything, including this light that's up here. Yeah, we got all that. And it was wonderful. Even a trip to Puerto Vallarta, if I ever wanted to take it. But I thought, no, I passed on that one,
Mhm.
because I knew I was going to be traveling. because we didn't know much about the disease at the time, of COVID.
Right.
And so you had to be smart about what it was. So people that I trusted, they would come visit few times. Most of the time I was on my own. And then I started to write. And I thought to myself, I have to be creative. I've got to put whatever it is. I'm not acting now. I'm not saying words. And so I started to write. And what I found about the writing is that it gave gravitas to language. And so that when I went back as an actor, after I started to write a lot, the language had a different feel to it because I had put muscle to it.
Wow.
It was an exercise. So sometimes, I always remembered my teacher Milton used to say, well, if you go through a paragraph and you don't understand it, some phrase or word within that paragraph you didn't understand. So when you write, you get to understand language. You really understand it. It's another way that builds your foundation as whoever what your career is. And so the first thing I wrote was a whispered past, which I enjoyed writing. And then I wrote The Arrogance of a Loser. And that took me a while. I wrote the first page. I couldn't get back to it for another few months. And so because I didn't know, what am I going to write? I love the title, The Arrogance of a Loser. And it was used by my teacher, Milton Ktselas, in class when an actor sat at the edge of the stage and had to make a comment about what they felt they achieved in the scene. And the teacher said after the comments were made, you have the arrogance of a loser. And nobody in the class really understood it. And that's why I couldn't get back to it. And once I did, there was somebody a friend of mine who threw a 30-year friendship party for me and then became an enemy. And I saw why. And that was the arrogance of a loser. And then I got it. I saw it beyond the class. I saw it in my own life. And so how I handled it. And so, there's, life is a constant education and development. And, it's like when I go on the other side, my teacher, spiritual counselor, used to say to me, when you go on the other side, you get a list of things you came in with and what you did with them. And so, it's like she told me that what she remembered, when she went down into levels, there was a Nazi that went on the other side and couldn't get out of the chair because what he had and what he did with it, he couldn't get over how and what he did to these people, the crimes, and he couldn't get up. So there are different levels on the other side. The people who are highly evolved, she used to say to me, those who have great light to them that we can't see. See, we can't see certain things because it's too much light. So it just becomes nothing. But behind that light, when Thetans on the other side are highly evolved and they have to come down to someone who's in a lower situation, they have to make their light, they have to dim it in order for you to see them. And so it's all a constant change. And then when you're ready, you come back into another life, it's the next life, So that's why I always think karma is very important. Don't take it with you. Leave it here. Make sure you've evolved from it, I'm exhausted. I've just talked too much.
I am loving all of this. I'm soaking it in because I believe everything that you just said is of my belief system. I was just talking to an astrologer friend yesterday who was telling me about past lives I've had with someone in my life and what the energy is that we're going through right now and that we're going to take with us into the next one if we don't resolve it here. So I believe all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were talking about deciding in your teens what you want to do with. That's where we kind of are thinking about what we want. It's in the teens? Oh no, we're just having funds in the teens.
Fun in
the teens.
That's where they get a lot of trouble.
So now you had a lot of transition in your early life. You didn't start out as an actor. So
no.
what I know the story, but not everybody out there does. What was your initial, I want to be
archaeologist?
Yes.
That's what I want.
But that fits in perfectly with all your journeying and all of that. It makes sense.
Yeah. I actually, a number of years ago, I decided I was going to become an archaeologist later in life. And then I thought, what about all the the bending and the digging. As you get older. And I thought, and then I saw how many years the course was. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to be an amateur archaeologist. I'm just going to study up and go and do my own digs without having, you know, because I found things in the earth that were amazing. But
Like, tell us something that you found, something amazing you found.
On the ancient island of Delos in Greece, when you go to Mykonos, you catch a boat. And when you go, the boat's about 20, 25 minutes to go to Delos. Was the ancient port of Greece, especially during the Roman Empire. It was huge. So when you go onto that island, it has a sign that says, not even a rock is allowed to be taken off this island. They're saving it for future generations. The island is got some of the most beautiful ruins. It's a small museum, but my God, everything in it is A-class pieces. And so I was with a group of 6 people, and I was coming through, and there was this fence, and I said, "Oh, what's the fence for?" He said, "Oh, because on the other side, you know, there's things they say are there." And so while they were walking away, I snuck back, climbed over the fence, and I started to dig in the earth. And then I found perfume bottles, jewelry. I found pieces of metal, and I'm going, "Oh my God, I'm the first person to touch this since the ancient world," which is from there, 5th century BC. And then when I finished and discovered it, I just put it back in, covered it, climbed the fence over, and I thought that was enough. That way, you know, there'll be nothing worse. It's even when I was studying on Schliemann to write my script on Schliemann, and I was at the Gennadius Library in Athens, I cannot tell you, I came across letters, love stories that he had written to his wife, and I thought, oh, I'd like to take this one. Oh, wouldn't it be, you know, that thing that's human. Oh my God, I'd love this. I could see it had in the house framed. Heinrich Schliemann, who discovered Troy and Mycenae, he would have this love story that I've been writing, and then I'd just get the feeling of it as I'm writing. It'd be right there for me. And I was left by myself, but then I said, I wonder if there are any cameras in this room. I wonder if they're doing it. But then I thought, you know, in Greek, you say tropi, which means shame. And so I thought I couldn't shame anybody. And firstly, it's not mine. It's part of everyone's, you know, it's a gift that I was able to be given to touch these things and to enjoy it. So when I got emotional and the gal looked at me, the archaeologist, she said, "I know how you feel," because I was so touched by the letters. So I left it alone. But that thought just crossed my mind. But, you know, my karmic destiny came in and said, no.
And does that voice ever not speak to you? Have you ever do you have things that you regret?
Probably in my 20s and 30s, I probably did some stupid things. But, you know, that's where I always felt that I was blessed. Because I'll tell you something. When I was with my spiritual counselor, Catherine Hayward, I walked in, and I've written about this. I walked into her house, and she looked at me and she said, "How dare you come here?" I was 23. "How dare you come here with the mind you have and the trash you associate with?" And I went, "Oh my God, I can't stay here. This is not a good place to be." And I left. 6 months later, I thought about it. I said, why would she have said that to me? Am I surrounded by trash, by people who go for the common denominator in life? And I looked at myself seriously, and I thought, choices. That was one of the ways I learned about choices. We are our choices. We are who we are because of
Did
the
you
choices.
change who you were hanging with? Did you
Yes.
change who you were?
Oh, yes. My lifestyle. Well, being with her. So I walked in and she says, "Are you ready now?" And I said, yes. I started with this woman for 12 years, 3 times a week. I came from a sort of abusive father. So I had a lot of stuff in me that needed to be released, that because when we hold on to those things, they develop into sickness, tumors. So I wanted to get rid of the things that were put on top of me. And now my job was to let them go. There were lessons. You know, you can't always say, we choose our parents. We can't always say, oh, well, or blame them. There has to come a time where you come at peace with it and say, okay, that was part of the past. But I remember she was sitting there with me one day and she goes, "Oh, I cannot believe who's here." She could see spirits.
What?
And she's looking up and she did her cross. And I thought, oh, this must be some religious thing, you know. She says, "I'm being told not to tell you that they're here, but they take care of you. And so when you say, did I get into, yeah, but I found myself later when things that were going to be against me, but somehow I was shifted. Somehow, for some reason, something came along, the phone rang, and I didn't do something. The phone rang. It's like you say sometimes you're about to drive out of your garage.
You were saved from your destiny. With you're not destiny. I see.
Yeah. And so sometimes I always think when the phone's ringing, oh, I forgot something. That was a delay tactic that was created so that I wouldn't go at that moment because something could have happened. So I always believe in those. It's ominous, but I believe in those signatures of life that give you warnings if you're listening. You
I
know,
believe them as well.
and then you know when the enemy's coming. When you get those things down, you know when the enemy's coming.
Okay, so you know when the enemy's coming. Are you ever incorrect? Is that ever an incorrect? Is that ever an incorrect intuition? That's what I'm going back to again.
Have I made mistakes by what I thought I knew? Yes. But then becomes I didn't know it well enough.
That becomes a lesson.
Yeah, I didn't know it well enough, you know. So everything, you know, because now I'm at that stage where I've turned around. You know, life is about becoming. That's why I liked what's his name, Obama's the first lady, her book called Becoming.
Right, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's interesting because I've thought of that word a lot, becoming. And what happens when you become? When you become, it turns. And now you're facing the traffic. Before, you're ahead of the traffic. And that usually happens when everybody who was in front of you is gone in some way, physically or emotionally or whatever, have gone. And you're looking and you're in the front line. And the only choice you have is really you turn around and you see what's coming at you. And you start to pull in people who are in search of mentors, guidance. Well, that's what I did. Now, with all the information that's been accumulated, you are now ready to pass that on. You become, in a sense, a sage within yourself because you've taken the time to understand and take in those lessons and be rewarded by those lessons, rather than shrugging them off or taking a drug or drinking and you know, suppressing them. So I found that now I'm attracting young men and women who are looking for some kind of direction because daddy's not there anymore. And let's face it, you reach a certain age, you don't listen to daddy anymore, you know, or to mommy. So you look for something that's your choice. See, I believe you make your own education. Once you get the freedom, you make your own education, the journeys you want to take, the people you want to experience. It's the same thing. Now, with my two friends who are here, they were telling me, you know, you're our mentor. And I thought, well, really? Well, yeah, because the way you talk, the way we've been listening. And so it's interesting about how people listen. And when people interrupt, which they love doing, I always say to them, I hadn't finished. And I go on with the conversation. So, you know, just subtly, you don't have to get defensive about it. But you see why some people, it's about ego coming. And I said to them, there are two things. Information comes from you or through you. When it comes from you, it's ego. When it comes through you, well, that's a more elevated situation, and that's a higher cause. So if you can keep that channel open. So when people, you're telling a story and someone interrupts and then suddenly they say, I'm sorry, what were you saying? And you say, I'm sorry, I can't remember. I don't remember. It's because their comment shut it down. And then you have to rediscover it again.
You had a mentor early in your life. So from archeology, okay, so you decided not to do that because, okay, at the time, it wasn't because of the amount of time. What was the reason at that time that you?
Well, you know, my father would always ask me, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I said, I'm probably going to be an archaeologist. Well, you know, I ended up getting in the diplomatic corps. I was an immigration official. And then, you know, when I got the free trip to America, I just fell in love with America. I always had, you know, through movies, you know, I was like, I want to go to America because look at the way they live, New York, you know, oh, look at those great movie stars, look at those great thinkers. And so I made it my point I said to my parents, I'm going to go. So I became the first Greek boy in Australia, in what they call the Castorisian Society, to leave home before the sisters married. You had to wait till your sisters got married to
Wow.
help support that. And I didn't. I said I was going away for 3 weeks. I lasted a year, and I got a job at the UN for 1 year, and then I went back home. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take I had enough time away to realize that none of this, anything that I had previously lived, was working for me anymore. It had become stale. It had become routine. And so I thought, against everybody's odds, that I was going to fail and do whatever, I decided to go back to America. And this Greek actor came up to me one day and said, "You're going to come to a class with me." And I said, "Why?" He says, "You have to be an actor." And I said, "No, not an actor." Anyway, so I went to the class, and I remember when the teacher, and this is an old story of mine, but the teacher said to me, my first acting class, "You get up." And I said, "No, I can't." I said, I'm not an actor. And she says, "Well, you're in this class." I said, "Well, I'm just a guest." She said, "Well, you're in my class, so I go up and read." Well, I was as stiff as a board. I mean, I was like the Greek boy, that came out of the village. And so I went up, and it was so bad that she said, "Oh, I understand why you don't want to be an actor," because I couldn't tell the difference between you and the chair. And so I sat down, and I was so embarrassed. And I remember my friend Maggie Frawley, who I've not seen since, but we still communicate on Facebook.
Wow.
To me, "Don't worry, honey, you're pretty."
Mm.
And that's how it all started. And that was enough incentive for me to become the best actor in the class at that time. And I proved to Mary that I was an actor. I had to, because I couldn't go home, because they would have said, "You see, we told you, you wasted your life," So I thought, no, I cannot go back home until I get my first acting job. And that took 6 years.
Okay, and what did you do in those 6 years?
I studied Chinese art, English 18th century art. I was an apprentice at $75 a week. After I finished that for 3 years, I went into fashion with Melodondra in New York. We did the clothing for a lot of the people from Godfather. I mean, you mentioned it. We did the clothes for them.
Wow.
And so that was a great education. It taught me about clothing. It taught me about how to wear a suit. A lot of men wear suits. They don't know how to. It walks them, and they can't walk the suit, if you know what I mean. So that was and then from there, once I finished that, I turned to Melodondra, who wanted me to open the store and deal with politicians in Washington, in Georgetown. And I told him I was going to be an actor. And he screamed. He says, "If you see these assholes who come in, what they're about, do you want to become like them?" I said, "No, but I'm going to see. I have to give it a try." Because why? Because that's the only way I thought I could make enough money to travel. I didn't become an actor because I thought, "Oh, it's the craft." That came
Really?
Yes, that came later. I thought I could make money. And people said, "How many actors make money?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to make money." And so once I got into it, then I started to understand the craft. Then I started to fall in love, and starting with Stella Adler and Milton Ktselas. Then it all started to come together, and then it became something else. And then I could go home, and I did, and I was embraced. And my father who used to be so abusive, would one day open his arms out like this, and in Greek, the word levendi means warrior. So my father, with tears down his face, his arms are open, he calls me his levendi, when he thought I was going to be the loser and the embarrassment of the family.
What was it that you did, Thaao, that changed his opinion?
I think because he saw me on TV, and he saw how people were screaming and applauding and all that. And also that I came off, hosting a show, a major talk show, and I hosted it for a week. So my father was like, he was sitting in the audience with my mother, and I came out with a tuxedo, and I didn't know what I was going to say, but the next thing I know is 200 women they hired threw their underwear at me. And standing up there on the stage, so embarrassed, and so Greek. And there's my mother looking in shock, and my father's going, this guy. My father thought, "Oh, all these beautiful women like my son." So that all changed, because he had a limited image of himself. He didn't get the chance to explore, because he was an immigrant in Australia, and they came from a certain society, but they had the only jobs available were being laborers, and so he didn't have a chance. And I thought, we have to go beyond our parents, and that's what I did. And so that's what my challenges were. And so I was able to send them overseas 6 times, which I was so pleased about, because you know, it changed their life. It gave them longevity. And at the same time, I was able to let go of all the problems I had with my father in my youth. And my mother was always a great woman, great lady. And so it was good. It was good to be able to go home. That doesn't always happen. But when you can, and you're winning, it's amazing how people love you because you're winning. You know, God forbid you're a loser and you don't get someone to be compassionate enough to say, "Let me help you. What happened?" You know. But I had to do it on my own, so I didn't have to ask.
How did you get your first break, Thaao, in acting?
Um, my acting teacher that I was with, they were doing a pilot, and it was what's her name? It was the husband of Shirley Jones. He was the comedian.
Jack Cassidy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so sad. Anyway, it was starring Jack Cassidy in this pilot, and I had a small part, but I was able to get my AFTRA card from it. And then I got another job. I then came out, I was in New York, and then came out with Milton Ktselas as his assistant. Then I got to do a play. Then we went to New York and did a show called Jockeys. And out of that, I got 3 films. So, you know, all those things are following my choices, as I keep saying, what allowed me to succeed. And then when Mission Impossible came, well, what an embrace that was to go to Australia with that. And that was great. And then I got 3 miniseries out of that followed. And then, of course, I had Days in General Hospital, and the rest was history.
How, at this stage of life, can you do a soap opera and learn those lines? How do you do you have a system? Do you have a trick?
I don't know if it's a trick. I've got it. It's not a trick. It's just discipline. I know that some people study their lines that morning. I could never do that. I have to be able to get off the page. Otherwise, the rest of the stuff that's waiting in line to come into the performance is delayed, and then you don't get a chance to play it. But what I would do is, I remember one producer came up to me one time and she said, when I was looking, I said, "How do you learn these 10 scenes?" And she said, "1 scene at a time." So what I would do is I'd start the first scene and I would number it number 1. Every time I came across certain words that I thought were important for the scene, I circled them. And so I would have to learn the script 4 times, and I would do nothing but study all weekend because I want to have a good time. You know, performing can be a great time, but when you're still at the edge, it's still at the edge. What do you gain from that? You know, the fact that you could fail, the fact that you didn't do as well as you wanted to. So, and because I had great actors in front of me, you know, great lessons that I learned. I remember Donald Carey, who was the head of the family of the Hortons on Days of Our Lives. And I remember he would ignore, and I'd say, hello, sir, hello, good morning. And he'd go, "Oh, hello." And he wouldn't. So one day I stopped him. I said, "I want to ask you something. Why don't you say hello, really? Why do you?" He says, "Thaao, I've spent many years on this show, and many people that I've grown to love had to leave. And it was very hard for me. So now I wait, does the actor survive at least 2 years on the show? Then I think they have a chance to start." And that's how it happened with him.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I would get Alice Horton, you know, I mean, she was the best. She would say, "Get him in here. Get him in here." And I'd say, "Yeah, what is it?" She goes, "Where have you been now? Tell me where you've been," because she wasn't traveling anymore. "Tell me where you've been," you know. And so they were great people, you know.
You and Deidre have spent so many years together and are such wonderful friends. Were you friends right from the start? Did that just immediately click for you guys?
I remember they gave me so many lines on my first week on Days that I thought it's inhuman to learn that many lines, especially when the muscle hadn't developed. But they liked me, and Gloria Loring was wonderful to me. I remember one actor who I won't mention, who came up while I was trying to remember my lines in these scenes and said, "You know, does anybody else want their plumbing done while we're waiting for this actor to get it together?" That was
Oh,
my first week.
Lord.
After 6 weeks, an actress challenged me and told me that I was just a bit actor on the show. So that upset me. And so I realized, I was the only dark-haired ethnic person to come on days for a long time, if ever.
Mm-hmm.
No ethnic, it was all very white.
White bread, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all white bread. And so I had to prove something. And so thank God for my lessons learned and what I did, and I persevered. It became, you could see it happening and how happy they were because of ratings. They made the right choice or whatever they did in those days and the way they proceeded, because they were taking a chance. I mean, I could see the cobwebs because everything had stayed the same for such a long time. And suddenly you come in totally fresh, fashion conscious, where they would call me in and say, men don't wear those colors. I remember one producer said to me, I have to tell you, in 1982, I don't know if anybody else had worn, I got a black shirt with a black bow tie and a black tuxedo. So I get them call me in, and again they said, you look ridiculous with that outfit on. Now imagine how many years later, that outfit became popular, right? So it was black on black on black. And I wanted to make a statement. I was a Demera and I was diabolical. So I wanted to show shades of it through my clothing as well.
Wow.
So depending on the set that I was going to work in. And I remember when they said to me, no, go and take it. I said, no, I'm not going to. I took the chance. I said, no, I'm not. This is who I am. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. And then I would look at them and I'm saying, so where did you get your clothes from? Because they had no fashion sense, Another time was when I had a blue shirt with a pink tie. Men don't wear those colors. And it all started to change. So what happened was you become responsible for bringing color, not just in the fashion, but in your interpretation of things and how you sat and then they bring Joe Moscolo, great daddy. We worked together, we studied together in Milton Ktselas' class. So I told them about Joe Moscolo. Joe Moscolo comes on and he's an enormous hit. The Demeras now, we have established, they haven't had a hit like that since the Hortons, And so here we were the shadowed people. And so Joe and I used to say, let's upset them. That's what, so Joe and I created the Demera family and I was the original. And
I watched when you were the original. I watched every day and never missed it, ever. Yeah. I was one of those, and you gave much joy. So what is it like now when because of COVID, when you go on the set?
Yes.
How are they treated? How now you're double vaxxed in efficacy, but before you were vaccinated, how did they make you feel safe?
Well, we used to go in, get tested, and then wait in our car for about 30 minutes. Then they would call us or text us and say, it's safe for you to come in. Not only that, you couldn't go into the makeup room and do talk. No talking. You couldn't
Okay,
go.
would they use the makeup on you that they were using on other? You had to have your own makeup, right? Yeah.
Most of the actors now put their own makeup, men as well.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't because if I take, like when I take these glasses off, I mean, I can't see what I have to do with makeup. And besides, I said to the producer one day, isn't the lighting bad enough? I got to do my own makeup. So anyway, so they were very gracious about it and they understood. And so, and then when it's time to get made up and then wardrobe, but it's all separate. As soon as you go on the stage, you've got to wear your mask. You can't walk around without the mask. And then as soon as you get on your set, you can take it off. But as soon as you get off the set, then you got to put it back on again. But now it's different. Now you go in, they test you. You've got to wait in your dressing room for 2 hours, not allowed to mix it. So you rehearse on the phone, and so I'm always used to studying by myself. So I'm okay.
Oh, you're rehearsing with the other actors on the phone?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then we go on set and then we do it. And it's all so fast and it's all dark, except for your set, So it's changed. I mean, when we came on all those years ago, we had the luxury of rehearsals and critique and getting it together. If they didn't like the wardrobe, you would change it a certain way or whatever. But now that's it. What it is, you as is the situation. And then, That's what you got to do. And so you got to be on your toes. And so when a new actor comes on, it's not easy, to do one quick rehearsal, which is also for the camera guys,
Right.
and then you do the take.
Wow.
And then when you've got 9 scenes back to back, how about there's another show following that you've got to do as well? So it's amazing when you say, how do you remember all that? Well, that muscle's still in operation. And I thought, not having been on the show for quite a long time, how was my memory?
Did
Because
you exercise that muscle during the pandemic?
I kept my mind, when I was writing and everything and recalling things, part of when you asked me about how did I survive in the COVID, it's amazing because of all those journeys that I've taken, I was able to go into my mind and travel again. So it was, and many things would come that I forgot, and then I would make notes down and everything. And so in the writing, that was a stimulation for me in the mind. And so now, with both having had both vaccinations, which psychologically, it does something for you. So
Yes.
for people out there who are watching, please take the vaccination. It's for all of us. It's not just for you individually. And I didn't have any ramifications. I didn't. I had a sore arm. That was it. I know other people sweats and things like that, but I didn't have any problems with it. So now when I entertain with my friends who have both vaccinations.
So let's talk about that. You were talking earlier about, I was saying I have weight to lose and I want to do this. And the doctor told me to go on a Mediterranean diet. And you had some suggestions and we had to go on the air and we stopped the conversation. Tell me more about that.
Well, you bring in that body, so you have learned how to operate it, And so what happens, we always eat the wrong things, especially in times of nerves or when something's not working out or love affair's broken or someone's died, we get into bad habits. What I do is I don't have lunch. I still don't have lunch at work. I'll have a breakfast. I'll have a good breakfast.
So tell us about your breakfast.
Well, I'll do, the first thing I do is I'll squeeze lemon.
Mhm.
A whole lemon and with cayenne pepper and a bit of warm water, and I drink that first up. After that, I'll do a bowl of yogurt
Mhm.
and non-fat yogurt, Fage yogurt, which I like, and then I'll put avocado honey over it, which I just love. It's like eating toffee. It's like burnt toffee, the taste. And then
Oh,
I'll put sunflower seeds over all of that, and then I'll put blueberries all the way around it. And then I like to have a Danish, or sometimes I'll have an egg, or have some toast with some not too fattening stuff. But I like to have some carb, and then I don't eat most of the day. Sometimes I'll just nibble on a piece of cheese or a cracker or something. But at night, I eat.
when hunger strikes in the middle of all of that, what do you do? How do you tame it?
I take a drink that I do. If sometimes because of working you're tired, I do a protein drink in the
Mhm.
afternoon
Mhm.
that I do with a banana, and I'll put, because it's good with potassium, I'll put almond milk with it, and I
Mhm.
put this manna powder that I use all the time, which stops any kind of cancer forming, things like that. It really is fantastic, and I may be the face of that eventually.
Wow.
So I do that.
Where can people get that, Thaao?
Well, Patty McCormick, she's the one who does it. So if anybody wants to know about these products, they can write to me,
Okay.
and I can tell them about it, because it's done wonders for me. Because we both know certain circumstances that we've been through, but it also protected me from COVID.
Really?
Yeah, the woman said, this will protect you. If you just follow this, it will protect you. So I take silver water, that I spritz in my mouth. That's another thing that builds in your immune system. Or
What's silver water?
it's, oh God, I don't have it here to show you. It's
Where
part
do
of
you
the products. It's part of the products she has that I
Okay.
order from her.
Uh-huh.
And also some fiber that I put in the drink. So that'll take care of the afternoon. For dinner, if you want to lose weight, soup and salad. That is the best way to lose weight, because it's at night
Yes.
where we're not exercising or moving around as much that food sits. when you're having a soup and salad, it's very light, but you eat before it gets dark.
Ah,
Because you know what happens when you eat in the dark, it rots. Things, you see what happens in corners that are dark. It's same thing with the body. So when you eat when it's light, it's so much healthier.
and then you don't have anything after your
Oh,
dinner?
occasionally, I'll have some bar of a fruit bar or something I'll do, but no, like the other night I did stuffed cabbage,
Mhm,
which I like.
mhm.
Stuffed cabbage and some other vegetables. Other times I will do, half a Cornish hen, and I will do that with brown rice and a salad. So I don't do a lot of carbs.
Mhm.
That's the thing.
Right.
Um, because people have now it's harder for women to lose weight than men. For us, it's easier.
Yeah.
As far as I know, But as we get older, body goes, yep.
Yeah.
And so but there are some people who live a life of stress and they stay thin, but not good for their body, not good for their soul, because it stresses you out and then it confuses you, and then you get angry, and then you do all things, and that all becomes internal, and that becomes disease. Dis-ease, the word
Right.
disease, dis-ease with the environment. So find out why you're here. That's the lifetime achievement. Find out why you came here and what you're meant to do. So every time I think it's over, it says no. Something happens and it says no.
Do you ever crave crap?
Sure. You mean sugar
And you
stuff?
ever want like potato chips or
Oh
something?
yes, I like potato chips. Sometimes, it's an easy, it's interesting. When you put potato chips out with cheeses and things like that, people go first for the potato chips.
Yes.
And then I think to myself, oh God, they're cancer causing potato chips. Because they're fried, it's
Yeah.
terrible for you. Better to get chips that are baked rather than fried.
I just got an air fryer. It's wonderful.
Oh, yes. Is it good?
It's fantastic. I mean, you do your thing and you have your way of doing it, but for me, it's been fantastic. It makes
No.
it very easy. And I can even make French fries without oil. And so
And
I
they
can
go in
make
that way?
and there's a way to make them crispy. I can tell you how to do it, and it really works.
Ah. Oh,
And
my.
fried sweet potatoes, I mean, there's ways to do it without oil that is, but so Thaao, how did was food always a passion for you? Was it a
Yes,
passion for you because
yes,
of
it was.
your mother? How did food become
No,
so?
she wasn't a good cook.
Oh,
Mommy was not a good cook. She cooked, bless her, she cooked everything too much.
oh yeah,
Vegetables got soggy and things like that.
yeah.
Uh, you are what you eat. You know what they say, that old cliche? You are what you eat. Um, I think because I think it came from Milton Ktselas. He was my mentor. He was the most, not him, but he was very disciplined when it came to his students. And
Mhm.
so because I know how to cook,
Uh-huh.
I know what works for me. Like this Sunday, it's not my Easter, because Greek Easter is not till May. But my friends called me up and they said, "Can you cook us a leg of lamb?" So
Mm,
I used to remember, you used to barbecue lamb, right? You put the lamb on top with rosemary and your other garlic and inserts. And then on the bottom, you have a tray. And in that tray, you put potatoes. And around the potatoes, you put the coal, so it doesn't get into the dish. But the drippings from the lamb and the rosemary and the garlic, I have to tell you, it is so delicious. And so that's what I'm thinking of doing. And then I'm going to cook a wonderful Greek cake that is made. We call it in Greek rivani, and it's made with. Here I go. I'm having a moment. Um, uh, a semolina. It's made with semolina and coconut and oranges and eggs.
so it's a wheat cake.
Yeah, and then you make a syrup, and the syrup is honey and some sugar and rose water in hot water, and you boil that, and then you simmer it, and then you take it off, and when it cools down, you pour it over the cake, and now that cake absorbs all that sweetness and the smell
Mm,
of rosemary, and the smell, not rosemary, smell of rose water. And I have to tell you, it's a phenomenal cake. And then you slice oranges that you glaze on top. And that's what I'm going to do for Easter on Sunday. Yes.
Wow. Where does your inspiration come for these things? Like putting a whole meal together. Is it instinctual?
Yeah, because when I go home, like when I used to go home, my parents were around. My father used to get excited. What have you brought now? What are we going to have tonight? Because the routine of my mother's cooking, after a number of years, you go, can we have something different? So I would come in with all this, and they knew because I spend money buying good food, and do hors d'oeuvres and that prosciutto and figs and do all that he wasn't used to. But oh my God, he used to get so excited. Now when I go home, and I stay with my brother, and my brother's wife, Helen, is a wonderful cook. But she said to me one day, what makes you a chef and me a cook is that you don't look at cookbooks. You come from your imagination. I have to look at a cookbook. That's the difference, because not all cookbooks will work out accordingly. They look good, but you have to learn, is this enough? Is this too much? What works? And so slowly but surely, I've cooked for enough people to know that no one's ever left my house sick.
So I'm sure that's true. How did you transfer what you do to your cookbook?
I went in my head, and I didn't, because although I did have a friend, she used to follow me every Saturday. She and I used to have dinner together, and she used to follow me around with a piece of pad and write these recipes because they were spontaneous. What are we eating tonight? I said, I don't know. I want to do like a Thai sauce with a grilled fish, So I'd mix things together. So there were 16 recipes there. Then I went in my head, I said, okay, when I make the Greek lemon soup, how do I do it? I do this, I do that, I do that. Then I did all the soups that I usually make. Then I did all the Greek things that I usually make. But in my mind, instead of having to make it first and see if it works, I knew it worked because I'd done it a number of times.
Right.
Like pastizzo or I love doing stuffed vegetables, But the way I do stuffed vegetables is the way the Arabs do it, which is to put raisins in and also to put pine nuts in. So I'll do the meat and the rice. I'll put the pine nuts and mint. Mint is very important.
I love mint.
Gives it a wonderful aroma. And then I take a whole cabbage and I'll put it in hot water and leave it there for about 15 minutes. Take it out, drain it, and then the leaves just peel off. They just peel off. It was a thing I discovered one day by accident. And then I will do it, and then I will put, I've made some broth, some chicken broth, and then I'll fill the pan with about, 4 cups of chicken broth. And then that'll steam it all, and then and then I serve it with yogurt. And that's my Greek stuffed vegetables.
Wow.
So food, why is food important? Because it makes you feel better the next day.
Did you eat this way through the pandemic? Were you eating as healthy? And
oh yes, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I made sure when it was coming, I went and shopped. I bought a lot of grain stuff, a lot of pasta stuff. And then, when they started using, then I would have friends sometimes would drop by and they say, I'm at the store, do you need anything? Things like that. And then they would do things to me. Or then I would use Instacart and get, that I wasn't that happy with them. So, but that used to come in. And so I would make, like, you can make soup, and I'll make a lentil soup, or I'd make a white bean soup with shiitake mushrooms, then put it in a plastic bag, seal it, and freeze it. So I wouldn't have to keep cooking.
Right.
So I defrost it in the morning, and then that would be my dinner with the salad.
I made more soup last year than I've made in my entire life put together. It seemed like I was just making soup all because I was doing that. Then I'd freeze it and then I'd have meals. So Thaao, do you have a daily routine? You get so much done. You're so accomplished. Do you have when you get out of bed, do you have a daily routine?
I guess I get into my meditation first thing. I drink a bottle of water, small bottle of water first thing. Just cleanses things. And I go into my meditation half an hour. I put it all together. So when I get up, I'm already
Excuse
prepared.
me 1 second. When I'm interrupting. When you meditate, do you have a place? Do you have a seat? Do you?
On
Where
my
do you?
bed, no, I go back into my bed. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes I'll go and brush my teeth first.
Are you lying down or are you sitting up?
I'm lying on 2 pillows. And so I have what they call pulsars. Pulses, like hundreds of thousands of microcrystals in these. I've been getting balanced for the last 38 years. This woman comes. She's coming again on Sunday. What happens is I'll put the pulses here over my eyes with a wet cloth. Since I was a kid, my mother used to bring me a wet cloth because I wanted to wake up properly, and she used to put it across my eyes so I'd be ready for school instead of going, oh, I'm tired, and I'd wake up. So I'd have a wet cloth there. I would put the pulses in there for my eyes, one here. I put another pulsar here in my throat, and then at the solar plexus. And then I would put one on my spine and two on my the back of my legs, and then one in each hand, and then I go into my meditation. That's what I do. That's how I start. And so when I get up, once I get up, I mean, I love watching my news and having breakfast in bed. Kind of indulgent, but it works for me. And then we'll go downstairs and I'll start the day with what I want to do. But I know I've got a list of things I want to do, and I achieve those in one day.
Wow.
And then
So what might your list say for the day?
Exercise,
Mhm.
the bank,
Mhm.
Food,
Mhm.
getting prepared for that, bills,
Mhm.
study on, because I'm doing my podcast, and
Well, tell us about that. Mhm.
yeah, and so that becomes important to me. So when I'm ready, it may be 2 o'clock in the afternoon by the time I do everything else. And then at 2 o'clock, usually between 2 and 6, I will be writing about my podcast. And so I finished the recording of it. Now I'm just waiting for my manager to put the special effects in, sound effects. And then that'll be phase 1. It could be 2 out of that. I wrote 16 pages.
What is your podcast about, Thaao?
It's really about the discovery of the Trojan treasure and how that was lost and where it was stolen and who has it today, and that it's worth $1 billion. And in other words, Schliemann, who was the archaeologist who became one of the richest men in the 19th century, he wanted to become an archaeologist because he believed that in the book of Homer's Iliad, it was a map to finding Troy. And that's what he did. And he found Troy. And he found the treasure, except the treasure he found belonged to another century. And then he wanted to go to the next step, which is, where did the Trojan War start? It was in a place in Greece called Mycenae. And in Mycenae, he found some of the most magnificent treasures ever found in archaeology. The golden masks, of Agamemnon, he thought. The golden masks of all these kings that he found that hadn't been touched since 1300 BC. And so my thing is, I think he unleashed a curse that started back in ancient time. So I'm exploring the curse as well. And so the second phase of the podcast will be him finding the treasures of Mycenae and all that gold and how he found it. And then the next after that will be the curse. And then the third phase is Ulysses. Ulysses came home after 10 years at war, and then he got lost along the way. It's an interesting
Is this
story.
the Odyssey? Is it?
Yes.
Mhm.
It's the Odyssey. But in today's Ithaca, they say, where is Ithaca today? Where it was home? Well, it's not. What happened to ancient Ithaca is what the story is going to be about. Where does the real Ithaca lie, and what happened to it that they had to move because of a major earthquake? They had to move, and they made another island called that Ithaca. So it's all about unraveling mysteries, which I love, and it's also archaeology again. But I'm going to put it out to people. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but
Put the challenge out to people. Go.
yes, I would like to put, when I do the podcast, I'd like to have a title for it, a name for it, and I thought I'd ask my friends and fans of if they could come up with a title of what the podcast should be called, and the person I would give them some form of prize, whatever that may be. So I thought I'd put it on social media and say, help me find out, because I want to get them involved as well. And my manager's thrilled with the recording, so it came out well. That's another thing about having written your own material. It's the phrasing. It's where you take the pause. How does it, when you come to a point and people are listening, you hold it. If you listen to Obama, one of the great reasons Obama is such a great orator is because he knows his pauses. If you notice, he'll throw out a statement and then it will land and then he'll go on. But he knows exactly about language. So if you want to be a good speech teller, then understand pauses and understand the language.
I love this. So, okay, last questions. Is there any place, Thaao, that you haven't been that you still dream to visit, to journey to?
Well, I wanted to go to China, but not anymore because of all that's happened. And I'm not crazy about this particular regiment of Chinese in charge, not the Chinese people in our country or Chinese people in general. They're very nice, but they're a little bit aloof because they're not close. They're different from Westerners. But I just don't like the way they've treated people, the way the COVID has come through. I don't like the way they're treating people who are not exactly Chinese and how those have those secret camps. So, I studied Chinese art, so I know a lot about its history, and I wanted to go, but not anymore, So if I did want to go somewhere, maybe South America, I'd like to go to Argentina. I'd like to explore the whole world of the Nazis there and how they escaped, because I find that whole history absolutely amazing, how, because I believe Hitler escaped, he wasn't killed during that time, because they had what they call ratlines, which are rat lines, and how they used to sneak out of the countries through submarines and get onto another place, catch another plane, and then go to South America. And there is a place down there in Argentina of where it is known that Hitler and his wife, because the two people they found that had shot themselves to death, they were burnt. And that the reason why they know it wasn't Hitler was because the foot was a club foot, and Hitler did not have a club foot. So what about that business, So I find that fascinating, that story, and how they escaped down there, and how they were about to start the Fourth Reich. So I want to go down to Argentina for that reason, and explore those areas and see if that place, which it's a museum now, you can go there, but
Wow. This is mind-blowing. I have not heard this before. I mean, I've heard rumors, but nothing that made as much sense for his,
yeah, and the way they covered him, and how they took out, I don't know how many tons of gold that they stole, saying that it disappeared. It's like, how did the Schliemann gold, how did that disappear out of Germany in the Second World War? Well, in 1994, two curators from the Pushkin Museum, Kincher and Kozlov, their names were, they were going down into this, to get to the museum across the street. They want to shred some material, and one piece of paper fell down, and when they picked it up, it said Schliemann's gold, and one said to the other, what is Schliemann gold doing here? It's supposed to be destroyed in the Second World War. So they found the number of the box, and because the Russians took a lot of 3 million pieces of treasures, they took back to Russia, because the Germans also destroyed a lot of Russian art during that time, and so and they hid it. And these two people surfaced that treasure, and embarrassed the Russians, and they said they were afraid they were going to be killed because of doing that. So instead, they sent the photographs to the Arts magazine, the American History and Arts magazine, and that's where it surfaced in 1994. Now the Russians, the Pushkin, they've surfaced the material. Now there's an exhibit on it, but it's so interesting that that's where it ended up, and it's worth $1 billion. So that's what I'm exploring.
That's my input for your podcast title, Treasured Journey. Two words to use a lot, and just
because I love treasure, because people love the word treasure. Treasure, treasure journey, because it doesn't have to be. I don't mean treasure. It doesn't have to be gold. a treasure could amount to some, there's one of the stories I want to talk about the time of Louis the 14th, 15th, 16th, and how Louis the 16th, during the time of where they were cutting heads off in the 18th century, there was a son of Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette, and when they killed them, they put the son in the tower. And so what happened years later, they said that he escaped. What they had done, because the nurse said, I helped him escape. And so they believed that this particular line of heritage continued on in France. But no, what happened was the doctor who took care of him cut his heart out, the child, after he died. And he put it in a piece of paper and put it in his pocket and left with it. Eventually ended up in the church in a glass case in water. And then the church caught fire. And in that fire, someone found a piece of petrified wood. They said, what is that wood? They said, we're not quite sure. But he said, remember the Dauphin? But the Dauphin escaped. He says, no, people believe also that he could have died. Did he die? Did he escape? So then they did the DNA and they found DNA on the piece, and it was a heart. It was the Dauphin's heart, because they took the mother's hair, Marie Antoinette, and had the DNA, because they couldn't have done it in that time. They took the mother's hair and they took the DNA from the heart, and that's how they knew that he died in the tower.
Wow.
But he never escaped. So all these people who thought they were part of a lineage were not. It was a lie.
Wow.
But that's a treasure.
That's a treasure.
It's all those. So there's so much to discuss. And then, of course, we're constantly finding things in Egypt, which I just love going. So it's longevity.
Okay, before you go, everyone will kill me if I don't have you tell one fabulous showbiz story. So a showbiz treasure that you can dig up for us right now.
Yes.
You have so many. I've heard a few myself, but I won't prompt you. A favorite person that you've met, a favorite encounter, a favorite meal. I don't know.
Well, I suppose, I've told the story about Omar Sharif and how much I just got, when he came into the room, he was so aloof and so cold. I said, hello, I'm Thaao. And he goes, oh, hello. And he kind of not interested.
What year was this approximately, Thaao?
This was in the early 90s, I think. And I said to Omar, so we went into rehearse, and he says, by the way, when you do this line and I hit you and you go flying over the table, I want you to be careful of the table. It's 18th century. Do not destroy it. You understand what I'm saying? I said, yes, but I'm not going to go flying anyway. He says, what do you mean? I said, listen, Omar, if you hit me in the beginning of the show and I go down crashing over a table, then you and I have nowhere else to go. And from that moment, he went, I love you. And from that moment, every day, it was champagne and caviar. I mean, for 6 weeks, I worked with him every day. And I'll tell this story about him. It's not a bad story, but I knew, because he died of dementia, Alzheimer's, I think. And while we were working, he couldn't remember the lines, and he started getting upset. So the director looked at me and he says, take him, you two get along well. He said, take him back behind the curtain and help me. I said, okay. So I go in and Omar, I said, let's go back. So Omar starts sobbing on my shoulder. Started sobbing. This guy that I used to love from from Lawrence of Arabia, and he's crying. He says, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed. I said, Omar, you've got such a wonderful history. What are you embarrassed about? So it's just the lines, Didn't realize it was the beginnings of the memory. So I said, why don't we do it first? I'll tell the director to do me on the first take, and that way we can repeat it enough. I'll make a couple of mistakes so we can have to do it over. That will help you out. And so we went out, and I said to the director, why don't you shoot me first, and then we'll work it out, and it's fine. And he goes, oh, okay. So by the time I finished the take, because it was a long take, and it was like 3 pages of dialogue, Omar was there. And he finished it. So from that moment, there was a special bond between us. And so he invited me to Paris. You must come and stay with me in Paris.
Oh, God.
And I never did.
Oh.
I never did, because I couldn't afford to go, because, he lived a whole life. I wasn't working that much at that time.
Wow.
didn't, but it's a wonderful memory of because even when I go to Egypt and I met Dr. Hawass, who was such a dick, I would say to him, Dr. Hawass, he says, yes, what is it you want? And I said, well, have you found a new discovery? He says, no, what else? I said, is Omar in town? No, what else? Well, is he in Paris? No, what else? That's how he was. He never gave me anything. And I thought that would have been a shoo-in for me, knowing Omar, to get into, to see Seti, the first tomb. And he says, if you want to see the tomb, it'll cost you 3,000. So thank God I waited, 5 years later, and now you can go in free, but at $50 to get in. But it's one of the greatest tombs. Anyway, but that's I can give you celebrity stories, but then we'd have problems.
We have problems. Well, I don't want to have problems. But what I do want to have,
Yes.
okay, the last time we had this interview, we did this. We were in your home and you promised me a meal, and I have a lot of witnesses. I'm saying, Thaao, that I'm double vaccinated and I'm in efficacy. I want one of those Thaao meals. One of these.
Like, what would you like?
I would leave that to you. I don't know. I wouldn't want to hinder what.
You're not a strict vegetarian, are you?
No.
Okay.
No. No, carnivore all the way. No.
Okay, so maybe I'll think about it. I'll do it all Greek.
Oh, I love it.
Maybe I'll start with the Greek lemon soup.
Oh, I
maybe
love
then
it.
get into moussaka, and then do some of my desserts. And
So
you'll leave one happy lady.
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. Yeah, well, you know what? I have a request. Can you do it in a way that would be non-damaging to my waistline? Like, show me how to eat well without regret.
Yeah, well, the soup is not fattening. The moussaka is not, because you'll just be having it with a salad. So you're not. And then the dessert, well, that's the final thing. You just say, I'll take a little piece of that.
A little sliver.
Yeah, just for the taste of it. That type of thing, and then you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the people coming on board and listening to this tale. But thank you, Vicki. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
And to you, Thaao. I'm going to go back and read the comments. I wasn't looking, I was listening to you. But if there's anything that people have questions, I'll tag you so that you can address them. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And bye, everyone. Thank you.
Have a wonderful Easter, American Easter.
American Easter, yes. And you too, love. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.